One of the things that Stacey Abrams has been frequently attacked for is her relationship with Linda Sarsour because of Sarsour's relationship with well-known anti-Semite Louis Farrakhan. Well, Stacey Abrams' ties to Farrakhan and other well-known anti-Semites just got a little bit more uncomfortable. And I'm going to tell you all about it because no one else will. So make sure you subscribe and hit that little bell because I'm going to try to put a few more Abrams videos out today as well, and you want to make sure you get them before tomorrow. Let's get into it. Stacey Abrams once founded an activist organization with the nephew of an extremist named Leonard Jeffries, who at the time was a well-known anti-Semite, homophobe, and Holocaust denier. Jeffries' nephew, Lawrence Jeffries, whom Stacey Abrams co-founded the Students for African American Empowerment organization with, not only calls his uncle a mentor, but at the time was a follower of Louis Farrakhan's teachings. In this video, I'm going to show you that Stacey Abrams almost definitely knew exactly what Lawrence Jeffries' beliefs were and knew exactly who his uncle was and who he was inspired by when she co-founded this activist organization with him. First, I will show you that Stacey Abrams did, in fact, co-found this organization with Lawrence Jeffries. Then we'll move on to show the connections to Louis Farrakhan and talk a little bit about who Leonard Jeffries is. This is an article dated June 27, 1992, that profiles three of the founders of the Students for African American Empowerment organization. It says, three Atlanta University students, Stacey Abrams, Lawrence Jeffries, and Kevin Donaldson, say their lives have been turned upside down since they helped lead the AUC protest after the Rodney King verdict. They helped create the SAAE, Students for African American Empowerment, with a membership of about 200 students from the 6 AUC schools. The organization was formed after a protest by students over the King verdict turned violent. The article goes on to quote the three students about their experiences, and here Stacey is talking about what it's like to run this new organization that she co-founded. She says, "It's like 2 full-time jobs, though. I wake up in the morning, I go to work, I get a call from Kevin or Lawrence. I have to run and get this done. It's like 2 full-time jobs, and you have 24 hours, 3 hours to sleep, and the rest of the time you're doing stuff." And Mr. Donaldson goes on to say that, "If you have told me 3 months ago that I would be sitting down with Lawrence Jeffries and Stacey Abrams and that I would spend most of my time with them every day and have fun, I would say you're crazy." Okay, that establishes that Abrams worked closely with Lawrence Jeffries and that she spent a lot of her time working on this organization. That's important because the New York Times is trying to downplay her role in it and say that she only stuck around there for a little while, when the facts tell another story. In fact, as late as 2017, the Facebook page for the SAAE still claims that Stacey Abrams was a founder of the organization. Let's take a look at the Facebook page. I think you'll find some of the content on there fairly interesting. Students for African American Empowerment. This post is from May 8th, 2017. They posted an article about Abrams and said SAAE founding member. Now, slightly above that, you'll see some pictures of the Black Panther Party. You'll see some loving pictures of Louis Farrakhan, some more pictures of Louis Farrakhan. I just have to stop for a second and really emphasize that this is a Facebook page of a group that Stacey Abrams founded that is actively posting pictures in support of Louis Farrakhan. And you'll see in a moment that there's a loving letter written about Louis Farrakhan on this page as well. I don't care how long you haven't been part of an organization. If an organization you founded is actively posting photos in support of anti-Semite Louis Farrakhan, especially right above post of your picture where they're saying you're the founder, you should get asked some questions about this. Okay, about that letter. Lawrence Jeffries, the person who Stacey Abrams co-founded the SAAE with, wrote a very long letter and posted it on the SAAE Facebook page about the first time he met Louis Farrakhan and embraced him as a fatherly-like figure. I'm going to read you parts of that letter, but first I have to explain his name change because he changed his name somewhere along the way. There's an article about it somewhere, and he also tells people about the name change frequently in his Facebook post. So I'm going to show you that first, just so you know that this is him that is talking in this letter. As you see here, this post was made by Lucata. I'm not going to attempt the last name because I don't know how to pronounce it. But that is Lawrence Jeffries. Here is one of the many posts that he has made showing that his name used to be Lawrence Jeffries. Lawrence Jeffries, NKA, now known as Lucata. Like I said, he's made many posts like that and is also confirmed in articles. So this is definitely him. Now let's go back to his post about Louis Farrakhan, where he writes a letter about the first time that he met Mr. Farrakhan. He says, "As I was propelled toward Minister Farrakhan, I no longer felt fear. In that moment, I felt like I was moving toward the embrace of a father. He hugged me tightly and whispered in my ear, 'I love you, young warrior. I support you. I am with you.' I was standing in a thick haze of relief, amazement, and adoration. I was later told that Farrakhan declared his personal support for me, my generation, and anointed me as a leader of the movement." I want to emphasize again, this is the person that Stacey Abrams co-founded an organization with, an activist organization with, when she was in college. And if you need any more evidence, here's an AJC article from 1993 that says, Lawrence Jeffries, a Morehouse University student who is among a growing number of young people more attracted to the teachings of Louis Farrakhan than of Dr. King, says John Lewis serves as a token who can be depended on. He was elected by white people. Now, Abrams' campaign would likely respond by saying that she wasn't still participating with the group at this point. She distanced herself from it because she recognized how radical it was becoming. This is what the New York Times article that talks about her involvement with this group tries to convey, but there's a problem with that. The problem with that is that the AJC article that says that Lawrence Jeffries follows the teachings of Louis Farrakhan was published in 1993. In 1994, after the AJC had called Jeffries a follower of Louis Farrakhan's teachings a year before, an article was published about Stacey Abrams and her accolades, including how she was a founding member of the SAAE. In the article, Abrams is quoted, and at no point in time does she denounce any of the comments about Louis Farrakhan, or does she separate herself from the group. In fact, she accepts the accolades. Because at that point in time, being a leading figure of this student activist group helped her raise her political star. It was a vehicle for her to gain power. Today, it's an obstacle that stands in the way of her gaining power because of the negative associations that came with it. So they are attempting to change the history of it. Okay, so we know that Stacey Abrams founded a group with someone who admired Louis Farrakhan. And at the very least, she continued to participate in this group and gain political power through her leadership role in this group, even after knowing that he admired Louis Farrakhan, and she never denounced these beliefs. We also know that this group that Stacey Abrams co-founded has a Facebook page, and on that Facebook page, they have continued to say that Stacey Abrams was a co-founder as recently as 2017, and that this group, this Facebook page of this group that Stacey Abrams founded, frequently posts pictures in support of Louis Farrakhan and even posts letters, loving letters, about Louis Farrakhan. It gets even worse. To show you how much worse, let's talk about Leonard Jeffries and Lawrence Jeffries and what Stacey Abrams absolutely knew when she entered into this co-founding relationship with Lawrence Jeffries to start this activist organization, this radical activist organization, something nobody is even denying. They're just trying to separate Abrams from it, to try and distance her from it, when that's really hard to do when you look at the facts here. This is an article from May 2nd, 1992, a few days after the Rodney King riots and about a week or so before the official announcement of the SAAE's co-founding. The article is talking about what some of the student activists are doing in the aftermath of the Rodney King riots. It says, so far, the student government associations have played a prominent role in coordinating the student response. Among the students who have been most vocal are Otis Moss and Lawrence Jeffries. Mr. Jeffries is the nephew of Dr. Leonard Jeffries, who, like Malcolm X, is a controversial advocate of Afrocentrism. He was recently removed as chairman of the African American Studies program at the City University of New York. That is definitely the Leonard Jeffries we are talking about, because he had been all over the headlines in the months leading up to this because many blamed his frequent use of anti-Semitic rhetoric for violence that erupted between African Americans and people in the Jewish community not long before this. So that's the right guy. It was already published in the AJC before Abrams and Lawrence Jeffries founded their group that Lawrence Jeffries' uncle was Leonard Jeffries. Abrams knew that beforehand anyway, because her parents were activists, his parents were activists. It even says in the AJC that he was groomed to be an activist, and so was Abrams. They all knew each other, but I'm just showing you that it was known who his uncle was. So Abrams knew very well that she was starting an organization with the nephew of a well-known anti-Semite, homophobe, and Holocaust denier. She knew very well. And there's another part in that article that's also very informative about what Abrams knew when she started that organization. It says, Mr. Jeffries, who is working closely with Mr. Moss, is an adherent of by any means necessary. By any means necessary. By any means necessary is generally considered to leave open all available tactics for desired ends, including violence. However, the necessary qualifier adds a caveat. If violence is not necessary, then presumably it should not be used. Again, that was in the AJC on May 2nd, 1992, before Abrams and Lawrence Jeffries founded this organization. So prior to founding the organization, Abrams was well aware of who his uncle was, the anti-Semite, homophobic, Holocaust denier, and she was well aware that this guy operated on the by any means necessary mantra. That's not the only AJC article that talks about the group's willingness to engage in, well, violence. This is an article about some of the students in the group sounding off about what they're doing in the aftermath of the Rodney King verdict. Here are some of the students' responses to questions from several reporters and editors. Students are saying, we don't have to put up with that anymore. We can do something. And whatever means it takes, we will not allow those that oppress us to dictate what methods are at our disposal to effect changes that involve us. Therefore, nonviolence whenever possible, violence when necessary. And how about one more example? This from May 12th, 1992, when a spokesperson for the Students for African American Empowerment, the group created after the protest, was asked if his group ruled out using violence, he kept his options open. As far as nonviolence, we will do what we have to do to achieve black equality, Kevin Donaldson said. When asked to elaborate after the news conference, Mr. Donaldson would not comment. That's two quotes on May 10th and May 12th, right at the start of this organization, in the AJC, saying that they leave violence on the table, with the by any means necessary mantra attributed to Lawrence Jeffries, before Abrams even entered into the founding of this group with him. Stacey Abrams was well aware of what kind of group this was. And the efforts to make it seem as though she left the group once she realized it was radical is a lie. In fact, if there's any doubt that Stacey Abrams was okay with this mantra as well, here's a video of the actual flag burning that happened on the steps of the Capitol, when as the flag is burning, the group is chanting, "Burn, baby, burn," and they are chanting, "by any means necessary." Now, I didn't get this video. Me and Monica Perez are the ones who actually broke this story on October 20th on WSB. Then the New York Times ripped it off from us, didn't give us credit, and left out all the important information. But since then, some more information has come out. This video was released by Democracy Now! You can see Stacey Abrams. She's highlighted, kind of standing in the back middle. Can't really tell if her lips are moving. Looks like they are to me. Doesn't matter. She's standing in the middle of a circle of people chanting by any means necessary as a flag burns. They had just previously chanted, "Burn, baby, burn. Burn, baby, burn." That's Lawrence Jeffries leading the chant. Here's the video.
Burn, baby, burn. Burn, baby, burn. Burn the racist institutions that exist in this country by any means necessary. By any means necessary. By any means necessary.
So Stacey Abrams founded an organization that embraced the use of violence when necessary from the start. It didn't evolve to that. That was their mantra from the start. And on top of that, her co-founder's mentor and uncle was a well-known anti-Semite, homophobe, and Holocaust denier, and he admired Louis Farrakhan. This is a group that Stacey Abrams founded, and nobody ask her about it. Instead, they sweep it under the rug. Let's look at a couple of things that tell us a little bit about Leonard Jeffries, just to really get a full picture here. I realized that I forgot to show you where Lawrence Jeffries says that his uncle is his mentor. Let me show you that real quick. It's from a Facebook post on his page under his new name. Here's a post that the man formerly known as Lawrence Jeffries made back on May 16th, where he talks about his mentors and supporters on the battlefield. He's talking about how he was supposed to graduate from Morehouse 25 years ago, but he dropped out and committed himself to the revolution full-time. He says, "Nevertheless, I had so many mentors and supporters around me on the battlefield," and the first name he lists is Leonard Jeffries. And the rest of the note is about how he did go back to school and finish his degree, and get other degrees as well. Okay, now let me show you a little bit about what makes Leonard Jeffries so controversial. Then we'll get out of here. This is from the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, but you can find this information on many other websites of the time because he was a well-known controversial figure that was in the headlines quite frequently. It says, anti-Semitic speakers continue to be invited to address campus audiences in disturbing numbers. Individuals such as Professor Leonard Jeffries regularly include anti-Semitic statements and historical distortions in their campus speeches. Then it goes on to say that black academics such as Jeffries espouse their racist and anti-Semitic views in the classroom and in outside lectures. And it focuses specifically on Jeffries, saying that as a professor at CUNY, he has espoused racist and anti-Semitic views and theories since at least the early 1980s. The New York Times reported that in an April 1990 class on heritage, Jeffries said that rich Jews who financed the development of Europe also financed the slave trade. The Times also reported that Jeffries has taught students in his classes that blacks are sun people, humanistic and communal, and whites are ice people, cold and unfeeling oppressors. Jeffries exploded onto the public scene in August 1991 when the New York Post published an account of a vitriolic anti-Semitic and racist speech he made on July 20th. Jeffries asserted that rich Jews controlled the black slave trade and that Hollywood was the site of a Jewish-dominated conspiracy to systematically denigrate blacks. Then it goes on to say, just as racism has infected some academic offerings, views such as Jeffries and Martin's have seeped from the classroom into the activities of everyday campus life. It says, in speeches and newspapers on campus, Jews are portrayed by some black activists, either students or speakers invited by student groups, as bloodsuckers, architects of the slave trade, and controllers of finance and the media. And it seems that the more provocative the racist speakers become, the more they are hailed by such militant black student groups. Speakers such as Martin and Leonard Jeffries are in demand and paid handsomely because of the notoriety derived from their anti-Semitic and racist remarks. Bigotry has become a lucrative career choice. The prominence of pseudo-scholars such as Jeffries and Martin show that anti-Semitism and bigotry are no longer fringe activities on some campuses. The Anti-Defamation League even dedicated a whole chapter to him, as well as to Louis Farrakhan, in a report that it released in 1992 called The Anti-Semitism of Black Demagogues and Extremist. The purpose of the report, as stated, is: this report is an effort to examine the anti-Semitism of extremists and demagogues who seek to influence the black community. The report goes on to detail Leonard Jeffries' role in a violent conflict that occurred between the black community and the Jewish community in 1991 that led to a death. I'm not going to go through that whole thing, but you can read the report if you want. I'll link it in the description. To really drive the point home here, I'm going to read off some of the things that he did or said that's either in this report or that's in another article that I found prior to 1991, prior to when Abrams and his nephew started that activist organization together, just to show you the type of person that Stacey Abrams knew. She knew what type of person this was, and she most definitely knew that his nephew was mentored by him. Here are some of the things he said and did. In April of 1988, an issue of the CUNY student newspaper Campus devoted a column to Jeffries' classroom racism. Lecturing about white people, he reportedly declared, if I had my way, I'd wipe them off the face of the earth. On August 19, 1991, the New York Post reported that Jeffries told New Jersey students during the past spring that he was sick and tired of having the damn Jews shoving the Holocaust down our throats. The New York Post on November 7th, 1991, published excerpts from an interview with Jeffries. In the interview, Jeffries contended that white people introduced homosexuality into the black community. This is a book, Jews and the American Slave Trade. The Nation of Islam's secret relationship between blacks and Jews has been called one of the most anti-Semitic manuscripts published in years. This work of so-called scholars received great celebrity from individuals like Louis Farrakhan, Leonard Jeffries. This is from the New York Times from September 7, 1991. The current controversy began after Dr. Jeffries gave a speech in Albany in July of 91, telling of a systematic, unrelenting attack from the Jewish community. This is from the Los Angeles Times, January 31st, 1992. Critics decry conference as hate fest. Black nationalist and white supremacist will share podium at program on the Holocaust and First Amendment. The conference will feature a one-time member of the Hitler Youth Organization, representatives of several groups that advocate racial separatism, and historical revisionists who deny that the Jewish Holocaust ever happened. Among the program's most noted speakers will be Leonard Jeffries Jr. Also on the bill is Willis A. Carto, treasurer and founder of the Liberty Lobby, which has helped support David Duke's political aspirations. This from November 3rd of 1991. And there's an article from the LA Times in January of 1992 written by a Harvard student who interviewed Professor Leonard Jeffries. In the article, which I will not read on here because it will get the video instantly banned, maybe even get me striked from YouTube because it has a whole bunch of homophobic slurs and threats in it. In the article, the writer details how Professor Jeffries, Leonard Jeffries, used a bunch of homophobic slurs to describe people, and also threatened to kill him if he told anybody about what he said. I'll link it, you can read it if you want. And finally, from the Southern Poverty Law Center, at universities and colleges around North America, a growing number of professors are endorsing Holocaust denial, race-based IQ theories, and eugenics. Of those professors on the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is no friend of Republicans, on their list is Professor Leonard Jeffries. So there you have it. Stacey Abrams started an organization in college with the nephew of a well-known anti-Semite, homophobe, and Holocaust denier. And the guy she started the organization with herself called this man his mentor and also admired openly Louis Farrakhan. Oh, and the organization that Abrams started made it known that they would use violence when necessary from the very beginning of the organization. I don't care how much you like Stacey Abrams. I don't care how much you dislike Brian Kemp. It's undeniable that Stacey Abrams should be asked some questions about this, yet this whole campaign has gone on and no one has asked her any serious questions. What a joke. I don't care who you vote for. I just care how you come to the decision. Subscribe to my channel and hit that bell to get notifications for new videos. I'm going to try to get a few more out on Abrams today. Like the video and comment if you like it. If you don't like it, go sit on an egg. I don't care. And if you want to help out the Propaganda Report podcast and help me make more videos, then become a Patreon or make a donation on PayPal. Oh, and if you want people to know the truth, share the video, spread it around, show it to your friends, show it to whoever. Happy voting, if that's what you choose to do. If you don't choose to vote, I'm not going to hold that against you because I'm not one of those pricks that do that. Whatever you decide to do, I hope it's an informed decision and not something you do just because Oprah shows up at your door and asks you to come with her. Thank you and happy Tuesday. Tomorrow. Happy Tuesday.